Hi, it's time for a repair video. So what we have here today, we have something different on the workbench. We have a music and sound set. This is a music and sound model DMC 3-4, which is essentially the same model as a NuTone NM100. What's on the back side of the set is the same. What's on the front of the set looks different, but it's really the same. It's just different styling. And if you've watched any of my videos in any of my DMC and NM series playlists, you'll see a long drawn out explanation of why this is so. This is a music and sound DMC 3-4, and it has a common problem that all DMC sets will have eventually, and probably all NuTone NM series will have eventually as well, which is the LEDs that create the backlight on the LCD panel have stopped working. Since we've started working on the NuTone NM and M&S DMC models, we're compiling our list of the 10 most common things that go wrong with these models. Top on the list so far are LED backlight problems and AM/FM tuner module problems. If you look here really carefully, I have all the lights out in the shop. You can see that we have 1202 or 1203 now flashing on the display. I left it flashing. I haven't set the clock, so you can see the difference between it being lit up and not at all. These are just the LCD segments that are lit up. The backlights are not here. So when we're finished with the repair, we'll do this same shot and you can see what it looks like with the backlights on, the way it's supposed to be. All of these models have an adjustment. There are 3 settings for the backlight. You have high, medium, and low. And the way you're supposed to be able to change it is you push the tuning up button and the power on button at the same time. And as you push them, it's supposed to scroll through the 3 different settings, and you can see it doesn't do anything at all. So let's go ahead and get this taken apart and see if we can get it fixed for the customer because they want it back. The very first step to repairing the burnt out backlights is we have to disassemble the entire set. The backlights are mounted on the display panel, which is immediately behind the faceplate, and of course that's underneath this whole pile of boards here. So we'll unplug the flex cable for the AM/FM tuner, and we'll remove the 4 screws that hold the tuner module in place. For all of the pains in the neck that these models are proving to be so far, taking them apart is actually not that terribly difficult. So you take out the 4 screws. Of course, we put them in our tin cup because we don't want to lose them. And the tuning module comes off. This is a fairly standard AM/FM tuning module. We have the antenna adapter here, and the mounting plate is attached to the top. So we'll just put that out of the side, off to the side. And then this aluminum heat sink, which the screws also hold on, it just comes off, and we'll put that over there out of the way. The next thing we have to do is remove this green support strap wire because it's just basically in the way. Screws go in the cups. And we'll put the support strap out of the way. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug the 2 speaker wires off the speaker terminal contacts. These are usually rather difficult to get off. They fit really tightly, and sometimes what you have to do, these are just sort of your standard spade connectors. Sometimes you get in there with a screwdriver and you can spread them apart just a little bit, and that makes them slide off easier. You have to be careful. You don't want to pull too hard on the terminal strip on the speaker cone because you'll snap it off and you may wreck the speaker, and that's always bad. Once we have that out, we need to take this top board off. This is the power supply and amplifier assembly, and the way this is made, it has these little plastic retaining clips. There's 6 of them all together, 3 across the top and 3 across the bottom, and you have to push the little ears in and then pull the board up past the ears to get them loose, and this is somewhat of a challenge to do, and I found the best way to do that is you use a nut driver of the right size, and it will push the ear. There are 2 ears, so it pushes them in together. That may not have been the best size. And then you have to sort of pull the board up, and it's sort of a one step at a time kind of project. And of course, as I've said in many other videos, it's easier to do when you're not trying to keep your hands out of the way to let you see what I'm doing. So nut driver's on there, and I'm just using this other one to sort of wedge it up a little bit. The problem with these is if you don't get the board pulled up high enough, there's actually 8 of them on this one, then the board slips back down, and then it slides back over the ears again, and then it locks back in place. So that's a pain in the neck. Fortunately, with a little bit of patience, if you do one side first, see these locked back in again because the board tipped some. So that's pretty close. So now we'll try to get this side. And I found that working from one end and going across is the easiest way to do it usually. It takes a little bit of patience. You have to be careful when you do this because you are sort of prying up against the board, and if you do it wrong, you'll crack the board, which will ruin it, and then you're going to cry. One more to go, like that. Now, the other thing you have to be careful, see this one was loose and then it caught back on when I was trying to pull the other ones off, and it's sort of round and round and round you go until you get it all the way off. I suppose if you had 3 hands, it would be easier. Almost got it. There we go. All right. The other thing you have to be careful of as you take this apart is on the bottom of this board is this twin row connection header. So it's a series of pins, and there are actually, let's count them real quick. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There are 30 pins, 2 rows of 15, and these plug into a connector that's on the other side of this board. So when you're wedging this one off the back of the set, you have to be careful you don't bend the pins, because if you bend the pins and you don't get them straightened out properly, they won't go in here and make the proper connection, and then your set's not going to work. So you've got to be really careful, because if you damage this, then you've got a problem. Anything you do with this set, the basic understanding has to be anything you do wrong, you're going to have a problem. And it's like many sets, since there are no boards to buy outright, you have to deal with what you got. Now, the second board here, which we call the main board or the audio board, it's held onto the back of the faceplate. There are 6 screws, no more little push connector things, which are good. So we'll take the screws out, and we'll put those in our cup, and then this will just slip off. There is also another connector here on the bottom side of the board, or actually it's the top, and it plugs into the connector right here on the main display board. So we'll put this out of the way. Oh, another thing to be aware of. On the front of the unit, if you open the door on the left, there are 10 room control switches, and that allows you to adjust how each remote station will operate. And here on the audio board, here are our decorative sliding switch covers here, and these actually will come off because they make them in different colors for different color master stations, and they slip on down over the sliding switch that's soldered to the board. You have to be careful of these because these will all fall off, and on some sets I've taken off, you pull this board off and they all fall on the workbench like dominoes, and it's a total pain in the neck. Getting all of these lined back up and stuck back on the switches, and then you have to turn the board upside down to put it back in the faceplate, that's a little tricky to do. So the less you mess with these, the better off you're going to be. So we'll put that out of the way. And now we're down to our third board. This is our main board. It's the display board. It's also the board that contains the microprocessor, which is the brain of the system. And it's held onto the back of the faceplate with 4 screws. Those go in the cup. Fortunately, except for the 4 screws that hold the speaker cone to the back of the grill. All of the other screws are the same size. The 4 speaker screws, they're smaller. So that's the only one you have to keep track of. And this one right here that I've taken out, that was one end of the green support strap. So once we've taken these 4 screws out, then you can lift this board out. And like the other board, there are button caps here. And those are for the functions that show through the front of the faceplate here. So you've got your auto, time, preset, tuning, all that other sort of stuff. And then these 2 down here that just fell out, these go down here. Those are the intercom control buttons. And so like the room control switches, these are sort of loosey-goosey on here. And since we're going to be manipulating the board a lot as we work on it, we're going to carefully lift these off the switches. And they go this way. And we're going to do the same on this side just to keep them out of the way. Now, we're going to take our faceplate and we're going to put it back in the work tub because we don't want it to get scratched up, and then we'll get on to the actual repair. So here's our microprocessor LCD display board. The microprocessor is this chip right down here. Has a label on it. It's a version 2.5 and it's dated 2008, which I'm not sure when this set was made. I think this set was made in 2013 because there's a date on the board here from when the board was manufactured, which is the 49th week of 2013. So it seems as if version 2.5 was in use for a long time. There are a lot of variations on these boards. There's a lot of revision numbers and assembly revision numbers. So they seem as if they were having worked on them consistently over the time these were manufactured. Here in this shot you can see here's our LCD screen right here, and on the edge here is a small circuit board, and right here this little white rectangle, and right here this little white rectangle, those are our LEDs. And one of the things that's nice about both the DMC and the NM series intercoms is that they're actually relatively easy to put back together outside of the faceplate. So that's what I'm going to do right now, because I want to show you that these actually don't work. So here we are under the cover of darkness, as much as I can do in the shop. And if you look really carefully, you can see 2 very small points of light right in the center of the screen widthwise. They're like 2 little twinkling stars. They kind of come and go. I think you can see them like that. And those are actually the LEDs that are putting out the very, very, very smallest amount of light. Okay, so we've got it all taken apart again, and we're going to replace the 2 LEDs. So one of the things that's really important to have, one of your very best friends, if you're going to do small surface-mounted work, is you need a really good pair of tweezers. And today we have a brand new pair of tweezers. This is a pair of tweezers made by a company called Dumont. Dumont are they're like the Rolls-Royce of tweezers. And if you've never actually gone online and looked at what kind of tweezers are available, you would be amazed how many hundreds and hundreds of different styles and kinds that there are. But Dumont are laboratory grade tweezers, and as a comparison, these are my old tweezers. These are the kind you buy at the local supply store. They probably cost about $2, and I suppose if you were picking up tater tots with them, it would be great, but for doing surface mount work, not so much. The tips are too big, and the other problem with these are just some sort of steel tweezers, is over time they become magnetized and they drag things around too much, and that doesn't really work out. So here we have our fancy Dumont tweezers. I'm not going to tell you how much they cost because you might be shocked, and if you're really interested in having something like this, you can look online and find out. These are catalog number 0304 AASA ESD-CO, and these are anti-magnetic ones, and they have an epoxy coating which I thought would be maybe make them hold up longer, and they have really super tiny points on them. They're very, very small. So we're going to use these because we have to remove these. See, and these fit on here just perfectly. and hopefully we'll be able to lift these off. Now, you get to watch, but you don't get to see maybe as much as you might like, because it's more important for me to see than for you to see. The other thing that we're going to use is our Hakko model FM 2032, which is our micro soldering iron. And you can see, compared to the regular size one I normally use, this is a standard Hakko tip here. And here's the micro tip. I suppose that, hot. I suppose if we move that out of the way, it'll be easier to show you. So there's the micro soldering tip, and there's the standard tip. Micro tip, standard tip. The micro tip is about 1/3 the width as the standard tip, which makes it ideal for working on really small things. So let's see what we can do here. There's one, and the thing about the LEDs, and I'm going to show you these if I can, we'll put that over there, is they're soldered on. There's two solder pads that hold it onto the board, but the body of the LED is plastic. So when you heat it up, you have to be really careful because it'll melt. And if you're taking off old bad ones and it melts, nobody really cares. But if you're putting on new ones and you melt them, that's not so good. So after we remove them and we put a little bit of extra solder on each pad, we're going to clean them just a little with just a standard alcohol swab. And then, because we don't want alcohol on the board, we'll use a little compressed air just to evaporate the alcohol. And here are our new LEDs right here. Now there are 2, 4, 6 of them left in this little strip. These are approximately, I would say, 1/2 the size of a grain of rice. They're very small. So you have to be very careful with them, because if you lose it, drops on the floor, you'll probably never find it. And the other thing, which you have to keep in mind when you put these on, is that they have to go right way around, because one side has the emitter where the light comes out of, and the other side doesn't. And also, LEDs are actually diodes. That's where the LED comes from. It's a light emitting diode. And because it's a diode, diodes have polarity, which means there's a plus and a minus side. And it's actually marked on the board here where they get placed. The anode is the plus and the cathode is the minus. And you have to get them right way around so that they'll work. If you put them the wrong way, they don't light up, because the electrons will be unhappy with you. Now that's as long as it took to solder it. That one actually went really well. I can report so far the money spent for the fancy tweezers is paying off pretty well. So the trick is to try to get it placed in place where it's going to sit, and then you have to use the tweezers to sort of move it around and line it up and hold it in place. See, that time it fell off. This is tricky to do, because part of the problem with this is little tiny parts like this, they don't have any mass. They don't weigh anything. So if you just breathe hard, you'll blow it off the board. And again, if you falls on the floor, odds are you'll never find it. So this is a slow and steady thing, but the trick is you get one side tacked on and then you can push down on it a little bit, tack the other side down, and that's all it takes. Now, you want to double check, which is always a good thing to do, because you don't want to put all this back together and then find out you didn't get it soldered correctly. You use your multimeter and you put on some little probe adapters here that have tiny points on them. And if you have it soldered correctly, you can touch the pads, and you can't see that. Let's turn the light off. And let's see if you can see it with that one still on. If you touch it, if you put your multimeter in diode mode and you touch the contacts, it lights up. So that one works, and that one works. See, when you put your multimeter in diode mode, it's sending out a little bit of voltage. And if you have a pretty good multimeter, it'll send out enough voltage that you can light up a white LED pretty easily. So we know that they're soldered okay because they actually lit up. So now what we're going to do is a real test, which is we're going to put the we're going to Frankenstein it back together, and if it works, then we're going to put it back on the faceplate. And here's our Frankenstein DMC 3-4, and as you can easily see, I do have all the lights off in the shop just to make it easy. You can see our two LEDs brightly lit up here on the side, and now you can read that it's 12:29 a.m. pretty easily because we have an LED backlight on our LCD display screen. And if we use our tune up and power button adjustment, we should see the lights change so that we have low, medium, and high. Low, which is still brighter than no backlights, medium, and high. Now, how long will the new LEDs last? I don't know. The world of LEDs is vast and complex, and there are probably literally a million different kinds of LEDs that you can choose from. We chose the most common run-of-the-mill LEDs that we could find because pretty certain that's what Music and Sound would have chosen when they designed this. Unfortunately, our super secret schematics don't tell us what kinds of LEDs they actually were, but I have a feeling that they were probably of questionable quality, which is why they don't last. However, you can also cheat this. If you have a set that the LEDs still work and you don't want them to burn out, so you have to send it to me to get it fixed, what I would recommend doing, and what I'm going to recommend to this fellow to do and everybody else, don't keep them on the brightest level because that's what most people want, but the low might be too low. Depends on how much ambient light you have in your house. If you keep it on medium, medium's a happy medium. It's not real bright, so they're not burning as bright. That's the ins and outs of repairing failed LED backlights on a Music and Sound DMC 3-4. This also applies to the DMC1, the NuTone NM100, and the NuTone NM200. They're all essentially the same, so there you go. If you found this video interesting and helpful, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube because that always helps. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. We'll have more M&S, DMC, and NuTone NM series repair videos coming up in the near future. The next one, we have a NuTone NM100, I think it is, and it's got a problem, and we're going to take a look at it and see if we can get it fixed for the fella. See you on the next video.